Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah.
You can ask to be accepted as written.
Okay. And that needs to be voted and approved?
If you're going to.
Okay, so I'd like a motion to accept these as written.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Flack and a second by Mr. Esposette. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries 7-0. There's a time if there's any patrons that would like to comment on agenda items, you're welcome to. Right. Then we have consent items. Can we do these as one group?
You can usually read the donations.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read the donations, and then if we could have a motion to accept the consent items as written. And there's many donations this month. So we have a donation of $100 to the MES RISE program. Popcorn for Play Unified from Tim Adams Insurance and Finn SBCS Incorporated. A donation of $25 to the MES RISE program, Popcorn for Play Unified from Kappa 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 Incorporated. Donation of $100 to the MES RISE program, Popcorn for Play Unified from Crossroads Bank. A donation of $100 to the MES RISE program, Popcorn for Play Unified from North Manchester Moose 1518. Donation of $50 to the MES RISE program, Popcorn for Play Unified from Laketon Lions Club. Donation of $97.91 to MES Book Fair from an anonymous donor. Donation of $8.21 to the MJSHS Squire Team Production Services Film Club from various donors, cash. Donation of $189 to the Manchester Junior Senior High School for violin repairs, cash from anonymous donor. Donation of $200 to the MJSHS Boys Soccer Program for meals from an anonymous donor. Donation of $250 to the MJSHS Cross Country Program to the Manchester Invite from Manchester Chiropractic. Donation of $500 to the MJSHS Business Department for the purchase of a cricket from Indiana Retired Teachers Foundation. Donation of $2,888 to the MJSHS FFA program from, is it Zotis? Industry Support Program and Participants, Manchester Vet Clinic, and anonymous donor, Vet Clinic. Got it. Donation of $200 to the MJSHS FFA program from Wabash County Farm Bureau. Donation of $500 to MJSHS FFA program from Huntington County Swine Boosters. Donation of $314.75 to MES 3rd grade from the PTO. Donation of $529.26 to MES 2nd grade from the PTO. Donation of $399.50 to MES 1st grade from the PTO. Donation of $650 to MES kindergarten from the PTO. Donation of $400 to the MES Principal Fund from the PTO. Donation of $153.38 to MES Preschool Daniels from the PTO. Donation of $161.14 to MES RISE Transitional Merit from the PTO. Donation of $199.41 to MES Special Ed from the PTO. Donation of $192.27 to MES Pre-K from the PTO. Donation of $250 to MES for Santa Fest from Kappa Kappa Kappa. And also, under the emergency additions, there's a donation of $650 to the MIS 4th grade curriculum enrichment from the PTO. Donation of $650 to MIS 5th grade curriculum enrichment from PTO. Donation of $650 to MIS 6th grade curriculum enrichment from the PTO. And a donation of $400 to the MIS Principal Fund from the PTO. I think it's a good problem to have a long list of donations, and it's an intentional move on our part to acknowledge that and just say thank you so much to those who support.
And may I interject with, we had more than $10,000 donated to our schools over the last month. So it's just awesome, the support we get from the community. Thank you.
So I would like for a motion, as long as it's fine with the board, for approval of all the consent items as written.
I'll motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second from Mr. Bedke. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, then we're going to move on to recommendations for approval. I was wondering if we could do the first three, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. They're all policies. If we're willing to do those as a single motion, is that okay? All right, so is there a motion for approval of those? Is that okay?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. So there's a motion by Mr. Esposito and a second by Mr. Flack. Is there any discussion? Then all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Madam President, I do have a question. On that no idling policy, are we gonna put up signs out in front of the school? Or is that just for our school vehicles?
The idling policy is down under discussion,
Oh, okay.
so
Sorry,
we're
I
not
thought it
there
was in
yet.
there.
We can talk about that one
Okay,
later.
thank you.
But there has been no idle signs up.
I think so.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some, yes.
All right, then, recommendation for approval, 4.4. Heather Turflinger, MIS intramural basketball coach. Is there a motion in a second?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley.
Second?
Was that Mr. Esposito? Yep. Motion by Mr. Hensley and a second by Mr. Esposito. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 6-0-1. Thank you. All right, then winter youth programs, there's a basketball and wrestling request for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you, Mr. Turflinger. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Hensley. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. The contract with Barton Covillama Architects and Engineers.
Yeah, I'd ask for your approval that we would contract with Barton Covillama to be the architects on our roof project. Since this is a project over $150,000, we have to contract with an architect/engineer to help us get the bids out to find who we want to replace the roof on this facility once we get the bonds and the bond money. So due to that, we have to contract with them. You had the contract in your packet. The contract would be for $29,000 for their services to help us with this process of the bidding.
Since the boilers are gonna be over 150,000 too, I question why we're not including that, saving a few bucks and trying to make a plan and save some money on the architectural costs. If we have both plans ready to go, even if we don't submit the boilers until we're ready, if we're gonna pay them a fee to do this, if we include that, if a boiler quits in the middle of February, we already have everything already spec'd out, and if we had to postpone the roof, we're 6 months out with this contract and gathering up this money. I kind of think we'd be money ahead in the long run instead of doing this and then having to hire them again in the spring to go ahead and do it as one contract and do both. Spec out both projects, even though we only send one out for bid. That way we already know what boiler we need, how many pumps we're gonna need and all that stuff. So if we have a failure and we have to react with this $1 million, we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we had that conversation with them about where we were probably at in their minds, and I'm just going on their recommendation, that we were probably not going to have enough. We were going to be close to whether we would be able to do the boilers, just based on the information that we've gathered on the roof. And then not knowing if, once we tear the roof off, what we may get into may really put us in a position where we wouldn't be able to do the boilers. And then any monies that we may have left over that wouldn't be enough to do the boilers, we could put that in a construction fund, and then we could determine then what we wanted to do down the road with the boilers, and if it's stuff that we can set aside from our own budget, or if we'd have to go out and do more. So it was kind of on the recommendation of them to leave the boilers out of the bid process, so that when we got into it, they didn't want to have to pull the boiler bid last minute and then have to go out and rebid roof project with it. So I was just working on their
Yeah, but if we
recommendations.
make it, it's one project, if we make it 2 phases, we end up saving money. I mean, we're the customer, I got all the respect in the world for Dana, but, we're gonna spend $29,000, I think we'd be farther ahead to get this other one spec'd out at the same time. We might be able to get the second half done for a lot smaller amount, since he's already been here and done the audit.
Sure.
The only prices we have right now on the boilers are 2 years old, almost 3 years old, from 2017.
Right.
If he specs it out right now, we might find out that we absolutely don't have enough money.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be very, very close, I know that, just assuming based on the numbers that we've seen, again.
Did he give a ballpark for additional work for the boilers later?
No, he didn't. I would assume that this bid would probably, or this contract dollar amount would change if they add the boilers to this. That would be my assumption.
So we don't know how much?
No, I don't.
Could we maybe table it? We're working 6 months ahead. Could we table it and ask him what it would cost to?
That's up to the board.
Just understand, when you do that, you're going to start this entire process over, so we'll have to go back through all of the hearings and all of this.
Well, why is that? We're talking about the contract, not the project. We're just
Oh,
talking
okay, I
about the
was thinking
contract
it
for the architect.
Well, when we're up for a bond sale here,
Yeah,
what was the date?
next Monday.
Next Monday.
Well, it doesn't affect the bond sale. All this is the contract for them, for the architect. Instead of spending $29,000 for one, we might be able to spend 33 or 35 and get both projects spec'd out. I'm only talking about the contract.
I kind of tend to agree with Dave on this. We probably ought to at least have asked the question, can we spec it out or do that? If it's going to save us another $30,000, it's worth asking the question at least.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that it would delay us at all
The only thing
on the
it'll do-
project itself,
No, I don't think so. The only thing it'll just delay their end of just working and trying to get their paperwork ready to do the bid process and all of that. But I think if we bring it back in December, we should be okay.
I don't want to delay it, but I think in the past on some projects with them that we've been able to talk with them and say, here's the project in whole that we're looking at. Can
Sure.
we work a deal, so to speak, that, we're not going to get charged another $30,000? It's I think a question worth asking,
Sure.
knowing that that work's coming.
Right.
Did you say you did ask that question, though? And they recommended not doing it?
It came up in our discussions, and then we just said, here's what we've got for what we thought was lowest quote on a roof, and they said he would be very close to be able to accomplish probably both projects with the unknown of what the roof may find underneath it. So, but I don't have a problem going back and saying, let's throw the boilers in the specs and see what
Well,
happens.
if you decided to do the boilers, you'd have to do that anyway,
Yes.
Right.
so.
I think the concern was that it was lumped together, and it may go over the amount that we have. That's why they wanted to pull it apart, and that was why they had that recommendation, because of the roof bids that we had before. in conjunction with the already boilers, that it probably would go over, and that was the concern. They'd have to start over on all the bids if they didn't do them separately.
We didn't send out the minutes from our F&F Facilities Committee meeting, but, you know, for the benefit of everybody that wasn't there, the unknown is we don't know how much steel is gonna be replaced, and that's an additional cost per square foot. So, you know, we're looking at $675 with a 30-year warranty, but, you know, unless Dana changes the specs on the roof, both companies, and he stood right here and said, you know, that's a good price and this looks good. So unless that gets changed, you know, the T&M quotes that we already had ought to be real close to the bid quotes. Problem is, if we end up having to replace, you know, 140 square feet of steel, then, you know, we're probably gonna have to take a look at what we can get done and what we can't get done. But I guess, to be clear, what I'm talking about is going back to Dana and saying, spec out both, you know, this is our project, spec out both pieces. We're only gonna put this up for bid right now until we find out how much money's left, and maybe we save some money up front versus having to come back and have him spec out a whole nother second project again in April or May and spending another 25 or 30,000. Maybe we can get a discount for doing them both now. And, you know, part of the backup plan in my mind is if we do have a boiler fail, we already know what we, you know, we got 30, 35-year-old stuff that's not made anymore, so we need to have the new stuff spec'd out so we know if we have to, you know, we don't want to spend $25,000 fixing an old boiler we know we're going to replace. If it fails, we just go ahead and put the new one in.
So just so I'm clear, if they would do a two-part, does that, I mean, that binds the contract some way for the bid? Or it can't just be their study does two parts and then that carries over to if we have to wait on the boilers, we can't carry that part of the study over?
Yeah, I can talk to Dana to see if they can spec it so that they would bid those separately. The roof and then the boilers.
I think the whole thing is, I mean, it might not save any money or very little, but it's worth asking.
Sure.
Is there a chance it could cost money if they spec the boilers and we do nothing, and does that spec expire? I'm speaking a language I'm not familiar with, but
Sure, that would be a question
And we don't know that answer.
I would ask for sure.
I'm guessing that's part of the reason they would recommend.
That was kind of my question in different words.
Was it?
If they'd have to redo it.
Are there negative,
No, sorry.
is there a negative impact if we don't approve this tonight?
No, I don't believe we're at that point, as long as we would do something in December so that they can get their paperwork rolling and get prepared for what could happen in the spring.
So can I make a motion to table it then?
There's a motion to table the contract?
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Mr. Hensley and a second by Mr. Turflinger. Do we have discussion?
Do we need to add something to the motion that Jeremy's gonna get with Dana and bring it back next month, or just flat table it? What do you wanna do?
I guess, to me, it was whatever Mr. Hensley was.
He has clear direction, right?
No, I would bring it back next month.
And you're absolutely sure this isn't going to slow up the process?
I'm not, no, I can't say I'm absolutely sure, but,
It would be delay getting bids out, getting on someone's schedule.
right, potential schedule, I guess.
Yeah.
When's the forecast for the roof now?
It would be looking towards the spring, summer,
Probably after school finishes?
yeah.
But I think the biggest concern is why they've recommended that we go through this process now is because just trying to secure roofers is incredibly hard, and we want to make sure we're the first one on the list so we do get it done. So that's the reason that we're going through this process now.
I don't know, I have to throw at you, you know, how long is it needed to be done? So that's might come back to that question is, you know, need to repair it for a while, so.
I don't wanna hold up the process, I don't wanna put us behind. I just think it's worth asking the question of, hey, does this, if we're gonna do the boilers, are we gonna get done another $33,000 or $35,000 for another project? Or can we just lump this together, and if we got enough money, it's in it, if not, we're gonna do it, but I don't wanna get hit with another $33,000 or $35,000 hit again.
Well, if that's the case, could we have I mean, hate to do it, but like a little special meeting to approve it? I mean, if it comes back that way?
We can, just understand we're doing a bond sale on Monday. So it would have to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week, probably. And we're not certain that's gonna slow it down, we just have to ask that question.
I wasn't in the conversation, Jeremy, but it just feels to me like you've already had that conversation with Dana, and that's why he said keep them separate, or was it a different conversation? Am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, I mean, just based on what we thought the numbers may come in at, this was kind of the recommendation we thought at the time.
Okay, and you think that if you go back and ask these questions, that he might have a different recommendation?
I think Dana will do what we would like, and if we ask him to put the boilers in on the bid process as well, he'll do that, and we can get him to separate them out, hopefully, and do it that way, and come back. I think he'll want to do what we ask of him, and like I said, it may change the amount, and that's fine, but we won't know that until we ask.
And to be clear, I'm not talking about bidding the boilers till we know what we get the roof in. I'm just talking about getting it spec'd out so we know
Right.
what equipment, you know.
Right. What we would need.
Exactly, so that we have that at the ready if an opportunity comes along.
So that part of it's not likely to change in 6 months, what we need.
No. I mean, if we need a boiler that pumps
Yeah.
4,000 gallons an hour, then that's what you need, and.
Yeah, that's
you
not
know,
gonna change.
You know, I don't wanna talk over my head, I'm not a boiler technician, but there's specs out there, and that's all I'm asking them to do is to spec out both projects right now. We'll have the bids ready to go for the roof, and then, once we get through that process, we'll be able to say, okay, this is already ready to go. We pick up the phone, call Dane and say, okay, well, now we're ready to put the boilers out for bid.
So I work with a couple architectural firms. They may come back and it may be totally different people in the firm that do this, and it may be additional cost, but I think it's worth the question to ask if we bundle that service, if it saves any money. That's kind of my angle on it.
Is there a way to approve this and then just ask the question, hey, if you spec both on the same trip, I'm guessing we're just saving a trip charge. But if we approve this and then ask them to do that, you understand what I'm saying, Dave?
Yeah,
Is
I
that-
do, but this is a contract, and once we sign it,
Yeah.
we're not gonna, you've lost all your negotiating power.
It'd be an amended contract then that they'd resend probably with a different amount. And then we'd have to you have to approve it anyway.
Is that accurate, Mr. Frank?
Yeah,
See
but you're
anything other
subject to
than
whether or
just-
not they're willing to amend it or not. But they can do that.
All right, so the motion on the table is to table this current contract. There's a motion by Mr. Hensley and a second by Mr. Turflinger. Does anybody else have more discussion? I don't want to cut you off if there's more to say. All right, then, all those in favor of tabling? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1. The next thing is the calendar year 2020 school board meeting dates. Is there a motion to approve?
These are all just on the standard second or Tuesday of the month, so.
So moved.
I'll second.
I didn't catch the second. Okay, so motion by Mr. Flack and a second by Mr. Hensley. Do we have discussion? All those in
I'll
favor?
just make a comment. I really think we're starting school way too early.
All right, I think that might be different, though, than the school board
Oh,
dates.
that's school board meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
All right, then, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Can we do 4.8, 4.9, and 4.10 together, or do they all need to be separate?
Let's do them separately.
Okay, thank you. All right, so 4.8, the additional appropriation resolution, Exhibit A in your packet. Is there a motion?
Okay, essentially what we're asking your approval for is the appropriation of the bond proceeds to be spent on the project's costs, so the $995,000. And unlike other appropriations, the DLGF does not have to approve this one, so you're just approving that amount of money for the project.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Flack.
Second. Oh, Bryce, give you a chance.
A second by Mr. Bedke. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah.
Mr. Bedke, were you in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. And opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We're on 4.9, the final bond resolution.
Okay, the final bond resolution asking for your approval establishes the amount borrowed. We know the $995,000, interest rate not to exceed 5%, and authorizes the publication of the notice of the sale of the bonds, which they would like to conduct on Monday, November 18th is when they would do the sale of the bonds. So this gives you the permission to do that with your approval.
Do we have any idea what kind of rate we're gonna get, or is that, I mean?
We
is
don't, that'll be part of the bond sale, but it won't exceed 5%. Based on the information we have, it won't be above 5%.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Flack. Motion by Mr. Flack and a second by Mr. Esposito. Do we have discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. 4.10, resolution approving amended and restated post-issuance compliance procedures.
And this provides approval and satisfies the requirement by the IRS and the SEC with the written procedures and the governmental entities who issued the bonds.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Flack.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Shaw. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, the 411 signed settlement agreement. Do you have anything to say about that? Just a motion? Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Flack.
Second.
Who seconded?
Mike.
And a second by Mr. Hensley.
He was
Did
gonna-
he?
yeah,
Or was it you?
I got it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
Stay.
Abstained. All right, so motion carries 601. Thank you. For 12, salary increases for classified and administrative staff, there's a 2% increase.
We'd ask for your approval to do a salary increase for classified and administrative staff at a 2%. This would affect roughly 114 employees and cost us around $75,000 for this 2%. This would include all bus drivers, cooks, paraprofessionals, secretaries, custodial, maintenance, and administrators in this increase.
And actually, how we arrived at that was just looking at what the teachers had and took an average of that so that we would be really fair and in line with what they got, so.
Historically, what have we done? I don't remember.
In the past, it's been 3% and 2%, usually around 2 to 2.5.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Flack and a second by Mr. Esposito. Is there any discussion?
So in the future, you know, I guess as we put the strategic plan together, I'd like to see for administrators, I'd like to see some type of metric on this, you know, and I don't, you know, the teachers, you know, all the staff are important, but, you know, for the top administration, you know, I'm gonna still come back to a scorecard, you know. I work in business to grow, and and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how many students are we down? And I'm looking at past performance to that, and somewhere in the future, I want to see student growth tied to percentage of increase somewhere in the future. You know, that's my personal opinion to it. Just like any business, any you know, I shouldn't say that because a lot of them, they have sales depleted and get big bonuses, but I mean, 2%'s not big, and that's nothing towards the administrators, but I'm still going to go back to our objective here should be to grow student enrollment. You know, we're going to hear tonight about population decrease and stuff like that. And I think you're doing an excellent job personally because, one, you know, pre-K, 2, foreign exchange students, opening that up. 3 are you know, non-English speaking people we need to go after. Basically, Heartland career, you know, we're short numbers there. So you know, personally, I'm used to performance pay being tied to some type of metric, and I think that growth is our most important metric. I'm fine with it now. I'm just kind of making a statement for the future that I think there should, you know, I don't understand how we go after student enrollment growth right now, or how people are incentivized to do that. And I'm willing to take that percentage up even if we hit those numbers. But I think that's important that we're focused towards, you know, growth to capacity, basically. I'm not talking above it. But in any business, we're looking to grow sales, basically, or demand to fill that capacity. I mean, that's what business is about at the cheapest cost, you know. So that's my comment to the two, you know, this proposal, you know. And it's comparable to the teacher, so, you know, I think that's a good way to look at it.
They are actually evaluated exactly how the teachers are based on a rubric and also based on the DOE letter grade. So they already have metrics that are aligned with exactly what the teachers have. So what you're saying is you want to throw in growth,
Growth is
student
an incentive,
growth.
and maybe it's 4% next year, based on that enrollment growth, you know? And I don't, you know, what the state does, that's fine. I mean, that's what everybody's doing, but that doesn't mean we have to follow that to the letter, right? So I'd like to incentivize people that work at the schools to grow our student enrollment. So if it's comparable to 2%, maybe next year we hit some numbers that we established, maybe it's 4% or 5%, you know? But I think that should be a focus, and I know it's a focus of people, but I'm just kind of used to having metrics, you know, growth metrics tied to performance pay, so.
And they are, because they have to be highly effective or effective to even get that. So how would you do that for classified staff then?
I don't know, I'm just making a statement. I don't,
Just trying to get clarity.
yeah. I'm just saying, you know, the 2%'s good. I think they deserve it, to be honest with you. They all deserve it. They probably deserve more, to be honest with you, for what they do, is my personal feeling. But
I agree.
I'm thinking that we can potentially incentivize even more based on student growth. I don't see that, you know, test scores, you know, I'm used to seeing growth as the major metric. If you're doing things right, you're growing, right? Even if, I don't care if population's going to decrease or not, you know, there's opportunities out there to increase the student enrollment. So that's my statement, so, comment.
I have a question. Could you explain the effective or highly effective? How is that arrived at? Is that based on the students' test for the teachers? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's based on a rubric. There's a principal rubric that they are evaluated on, and they have to become effective or highly effective, and then they're also, the letter grade is factored in as well.
The letter grade for the school?
Correct, same thing with the teachers.
Okay. I guess as we go through this strategic plan, just throwing an idea out here, goals. He's talking about a scorecard. Where I came from, you had goals every year. Maybe we could take a certain amount of money and put it out there for everybody, from the custodians all the way to you. And if you come up with a cost savings, or you come up with a way to recruit more students, some kind of a goal and incentive plan to make Manchester Community Schools. I know, like when I was still working, we had 5 goals every year, 20%, and you could get up to 5% of your salary, which obviously we can't do something like that here, but maybe there could be some kind of an incentive. You and I had talked before about awards, you know, Teacher of the Year, Employee of the Year. It just along the same thing as we're getting into the strategic plan, maybe that's something we could look at.
And Dave, my point's that, you know, where do we stand in rank of Indiana for teacher pay and administrative pay? In the
For the
country?
whole state,
In the country,
we're 47th in the state.
bingo. So what I'm saying is, you may not be, you know, why don't we look at how to incentivize better pay for our teachers and our administrators by growth and things like that versus, you know, one of these days, maybe the federal or state government may do it. But my point is, you know, education is the key to economic development, you know, and the teachers are the value adders to economic development in my book. And so what, you know, I'm just saying, why do we have to wait to get further incentive for these people? You know, we're way down there. I see where the money streams are going, you know, it's into corporations, and it's gonna take individual boards to start changing that, you know, in the state, so.
And I'm just gonna be real frank with you, when it comes to teachers and staff, the research will show you that motivating them by dangling a carrot of money in front of them will not work. It's not something that any of us are motivated. We're motivated because we wanna help students. So, I mean, I'm not gonna speak for you, but I'm just telling you what the research all says. I'll be glad to show you some of that research.
I'm not talking about dangling a carrot, I'm talking about affordable living and bringing up the state to a comparable level that other states pay teachers and administrators, so. And I don't wanna get into this, to be honest with you tonight, I got things to do, but I was making that statement to say, you know, to me, one of the most important things we have here is student growth.
I
We're
agree with
down.
you, and I think everybody over there would agree with you
No,
too.
and I know they do, you know,
So-
but I'm just saying how, you know, is there a potential to incentivize people towards that versus test scores and the other things that are in that rubric?
We can ask them that and have them give a recommendation on the strategic plan.
I would like to make just a quick comment to that, is that if you want to look historically over the last 5 years, I would totally disagree with what you're saying, because our student growth has grown each year. So right now, where we've started to go back. The reason why we had growth over the last 4 or 5 years is because we've had an outstanding staff that's put education first. We had an administration that put education first, and for growth, to grow our schools. We are now at a point, in my opinion, that it's time for the community to step up, and that is housing, jobs, a reason to draw people here. The school can only do so much. I mean, we're limited by the amount of students we have here, the amount of tax dollars we got coming in, and therefore, I mean, I'd love to pay teachers more than we do well, but we're bound by state laws and what we're provided by tax dollars. But having said that, though, we want to continue to grow, yes, but it's time for the community to step up and start providing some of this other stuff, to have people move here, pay taxes, bring kids here, be in school. And I think we've done a great job out on those fringes of bringing students into this school because we provided outstanding education. We have an outstanding staff. We just need to step back and get going back in that direction again. And I think we will. I mean, we've been without some leadership for a while. We got Teresa back, or we got Teresa now. So let's give us some time and start moving forward. It's a great point. I don't disagree with you, but I think there's opportunity, but it's going to take the community and the school working together to move forward. And that does mean building stuff, moving forward, and creating a reason for people to move here. So.
Well, and I
that's
want our
my
school
feeling.
system to be ready to embrace that, and this isn't anything new, right? We talked about this 12, 14 years ago. I remember the community over here doing similar to what Mrs. Grant's gonna talk about. I remember having all superintendents, the business community, and the bus going up to Kalamazoo Promise, you know, starting to talk about housing or amenities within the community and business growth, you know? And I think finally that's gonna happen in this community. And what I'm saying, I'm right with you, Steve, is I think we need to be prepared to accept that and look at any channel we can for student growth along with the community growth. That's all I'm saying. And when I make comments, I'm never knocking on the teachers and administrators. I know we have great schools and we have great people. I think sometimes when I say things, it's, you guys turn defensive or something on it, and I'm not, in no way am I knocking these people in here, you know? So, let's move on.
And I would just add too, my comments are the same thing. It's a way for an employee to come up with a better idea or a cost savings and have a process to share that, or maybe to move themselves ahead, you know, to stand above the crowd. So, but it's definitely not a knock on anybody. And Steve's right, you know, I wish all of you could have went to that thing over in Findlay, Ohio, Hancock County. Exactly what he talked about. You know, they put coalitions together and sat down, and they had the community leaders in the schools, and of course they had some flooding and some FEMA money, but I'm getting off track here. But Steve's right, it's got to be the whole community working. You know, we've had a housing shortage here for 20 years, you know, and 20 new houses isn't going to do it. I mean, one of the things that they did do was they reached out to developers from outside of their state. So I think we got a motion on the table there, don't we, Madam
Yeah, I'm
President?
just waiting for the discussion.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to cut anyone off. All right, so there's been a motion by Mr. Flack and a second by Mr. Esposito. We're on 4.12, the salary increase for classified and administrative staff. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And finally, under the recommendations for approval is the 2020-2021 MCS calendar.
And I would just say, the calendar that was submitted there, there will be a modification on that, and we're asking for that approval with the modification from February 8th move to January 18th, which is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We're not really sure how it got moved, but unfortunately it was an oversight, but we're asking for that to be a change and be approved with that change.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
So motion by Mr. Esposito and a second by Mr. Flack. Do you have discussion?
Why are we starting school in the middle of August with e-learn? I mean, I understand this is what we've always done, and with e-learn and the snow days, and I'm looking at, you know, if you take out a midterm break and you shorten up the spring break by one day, I mean, right there you could back it up a week. You know, I mean, let's face it, folks, it's a lot cheaper to air condition a building for an extra week in June than it is in the middle of August. You know, we got all these kids out working, we're making them quit early, you know, it interferes with the state fair. I just think, you know, I'm just gonna go on the record as, we may have to approve this. And I understand there's 5 other school districts with Heartland Career, and, you know, Mark has to sit down there and wait for the dog to wag the tail so he can figure out his calendar, but I really think that next year we need to take a real hard look at moving this back closer to September start.
Is this coming from teachers?
This is coming directly from teachers, and we are all trying to work with Heartland to make sure that our calendars are matching up so our students are not missing classes there. So that is why we chose to keep the calendar like it was. So,
And I think, does this come through MTA? So MTA's
Yes.
approved it
Yes.
before it comes to
I
us?
can ask them, they're sitting right over
All
there.
right, so, and I'm assuming if it weren't approved by MTA, it wouldn't be coming to us?
Correct, it
Like-
goes through discussion, so it's
Mhm.
not a negotiation, but yes, it has gone through discussion.
All right, so it is safe for me to set up here and assume in this seat that teachers are okay with this calendar?
It's the best compromise of all places we can come up with.
Yep. Yeah, there's always a compromise. Is there more discussion? I think we have a motion. Do we have a motion already?
I did, yeah.
It was a motion by Mr. Espacet and a second by Mr.
Steve
Flack.
motion, Rick second.
Oh my, I'm so confused. But Melissa can,
We need
Missy
a-
can find it in
Right.
the recording. There is a motion and a second.
Yes, Rick and Steve.
Okay.
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Thank you. All right, so discussion information. We have a presentation from the Community Foundation of Wabash County.
The big question is. You getting any sleep? Good sleeper? Yeah, good. Some orders in there.
Ta-da, thank you. Thanks, I'm so glad there's support here. Thank you very, very much.
You're going to
for
need to use the
allowing-
mic, please. Just for the recording. Yeah, thank you.
Good? Yeah. Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks for your service to our community and our kids. I know this isn't an easy leadership position, and on behalf of the Community Foundation, the community, and my kids and family, thank you very much. For those of you who don't know, I'm Patty Grant. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Wabash County, located here in North Manchester. And this is Tennille Zartman. Tennille is Vice President of Grow Wabash County, which is, if you might remember, is the former Economic Development Group merged with the Wabash County Chamber of Commerce a few years back. And Tennille and I are both Manchester High School graduates. So are my children, so this is really special to be here. Population decline certainly is not foreign to you. We all experience it in many, many different ways. Certainly you experience it inside the halls of these buildings. But the Community Foundation and Grow Wabash County partnered to take it a little deeper, closer look. And the reason why we did that is not because we're brilliant scientists and we think we know more than anybody else, but because we wanted to sharpen the focus. We wanted to create a sense of urgency across the whole county to coalesce in some initiatives or some ideas that might stem the decline. This program or this study has been funded by the Lilly Endowment. You may know from past presentations when I've been here, the Lilly Endowment has generously funded community foundations in Indiana. Every county in Indiana has a community foundation. Some of us were founded in 1990 with the GIFT Initiative. Our own community foundation was founded in 1954, long, long time ago, and has had kind of a running start in this work. Lilly has challenged us with their GIFT Initiative. It stands for Giving Indiana Funds for Tomorrow. This is the 7th phase. It began in 1990. And community foundations have amassed assets of $3.6 billion as a result of the matching gifts from the Lilly Endowment. This time, they've challenged community foundations by effectively saying, we didn't put you in business to be a bank. We didn't put you in business to transact donations and grants. We'd like you to use the 20 years experience now that you have to collect all the information you have and collect the resources that you have from your donors, coalesce your donors around the ideas to entertain opportunities and challenges in your county. So every community foundation is granted a planning grant. That's how this study was paid for. We are granted an implementation grant of $100,000, which we have yet to receive, to do further work. And lastly, in March of 2020, we're all invited to submit a concept proposal for $5 million for our county to address the needs and the challenges. The planning grant was $50,000, the implementation grant is $100,000, and that was pretty low-hanging fruit. Most every community foundation will get that, because the method in their madness is to fund us to do this work and to think about what we need to do, such that whether we get $5 million or not, we have a plan or an idea, or we have developed the leadership and the partners or the donors and the initiatives to address some of our challenges. So the bad news about that $5 million proposal is that in March of 2020, it's likely they will only award 6 out of about 80 community foundations. But we start in earnest. We start knowing that to sit still and to not respond to that $5 million challenge, just like every other community foundation in this state, we are all working and paddling as fast as we can to find some of the answers to restore prosperity, to bring prosperity, and to grow our population. So I'm going to introduce to Neil, who's going to take you through the economics of this study. And then, by the way, this is a condensed version of the study. The complete study, which is produced by Purdue University in Fort Wayne, can be found on our website and Grow Wabash County's website. It's 85 pages long. Those you scientists out there, I understand more now that when you go to produce a report like this, you scoop up all the data you possibly can, and then you sift through it like you're mining for gold to figure out where's the story here, how do we put this data together. So the complete research is 85 pages long, and that's on our website if you're interested. This presentation that we're giving this evening was produced 3 times in public forum at about 90 minutes, and we're going to try to condense it down to much shorter. I'm sure you all would like to get home. So we'll do a shortened version, but certainly if you have ideas, comments, please let us know, either at Grow Wabash County or at the Community Foundation in North Manchester. So I'm going to turn it over to Neil.
Lower that a little bit. So I'm going to share with you some of the bad news, as Mike asked. From this chart, you can see the left-hand axis in the blue line is Wabash County. The right-hand axis in the orange line is the Northeast Indiana population from 1978 to 2017. Northeast Indiana is made up of 11 counties that we are aligned with. And you can see since about the 80s, they have been growing in population, whereas Wabash County peaked in the 80s, flattened for a while, and since 2001 has declined year over year. And unfortunately, our projections are also looking a little meek there. We are projected to continue to decline through 2050. Interesting point we wanted to bring up, although our population is declining, the number of households is actually increasing. The makeup of those households is moving from family households to non-family households. And what that data means is it's more likely widowers, widows, and single parents whose kids have recently moved out of the house. So it's not the traditional family. So we do have more households, but they're more single or non-family. And just to note, since we're in Manchester, Manchester University students are not included in that data, so just full-time residents. If we're looking at our industry, there's been some changes over the past 17 years. The left-hand side is a list of counties. Those counties were chosen because that's our commuting pattern. So Wabash County residents are either going to those counties for work, or people from those counties are coming into Wabash County for work. So we're looking at manufacturing, financial activities like banking, professional, scientific, and technical services. So that would be law offices, professional business services. And we're looking at financial activity and professional scientific technologies because those are typically a post-bachelor degree. So that's kind of what kind of jobs we're looking for as we look to attract educated people to our community. So in manufacturing, Wabash County is still heavily manufacturing, despite that number of, we've lost 50% of manufacturing jobs in the last 17 years in Wabash County. But we're not alone. All of our neighboring counties, as well as Allen County, are also losing manufacturing jobs. The output of manufacturing is still strong, but it takes less people to get that same amount of output or more. One thing to note is the blue line in the center there, Kosciuszko, has actually had a slight increase in manufacturing, but that is any job within that heading counts as manufacturing. So theirs has been an increase in research and development and administration within manufacturing. So it's not necessarily that production worker you think of when you think of the word manufacturing. So even the lawyer that works for the manufacturing firm would be considered manufacturing in this chart. We have had a minimal increase in the professional, scientific, and technical service, but comparatively, if you look at the loss that we've had in manufacturing, we still have some work to do there in growing jobs in that sector as well. In regards to income, we're looking at per capita personal income. We look at this number. It is all the income in a county, so retirement, if you have rental properties, any income you have, all income in a county divided by all the people in the county. So if you want to think of it, even a baby would be attributed income. We look at this number because it's easy to calculate every year because that data is available every year. In the region as a whole uses that number, so we can use that to compare it. The top line, the orange line, is Wabash County's per capita personal income compared to the region. And the blue bottom line is Wabash County's per capita personal income compared to the nation. So what that means is if you live in Wabash County and are an accountant, you're likely only to make about 78% of what you would make if you lived elsewhere. So as we're looking to attract people from Phoenix, Arizona, when they first look at that job that they're doing there, their income may be lower here. So that is one thing that we're up against. And to raise that per capita personal income, we would have to outperform the nations at a rapid rate to gain movement upwards in that direction. What this means for school forecasts, school enrollment forecasts. This chart on the left-hand side is what has already happened for school enrollment, and the right-hand side is the forecasted school enrollment. The data from this is from the Department of Education for enrollment numbers, and the forecast is from the 2017 McKibben study. So we'll skip ahead here to projections. We've had 2 years to compare to the projections. So if you look at these numbers, we're actually doing better than forecasted, which means we've actually attracted more students than what they thought. So the consultants that worked on this for us did warn us that this is not sustainable because a lot of the growth we've had has been from surrounding counties, and a lot of our surrounding counties are also declining in population at a rapid rate. So we'll move on to some qualitative findings as well.
Go ahead. I knew that I would forget something. I did want to express appreciation to Dr. Lippy and Amy Corris and Teresa. There are several different initiatives the Community Foundation is working on, and we've received such great support for our Early Ward Scholarship Program and Pathways to Success, and we have an Early Childhood initiative that you've been helping with. So thank you. I know it adds work to your daily jobs, and we do really appreciate it. I'd forgotten to mention that. In addition to the qualitative or quantitative findings that Purdue University prepared for us, and by the way, if you look at the back of your study, you'll see the individuals that were involved in the study. In particular, we're really pleased to have Mark Becker. Some of you might know Mark. He's actually employed by Parkview Hospital. He is employed by Parkview to do community development work in any county where there's a Parkview Hospital. And he has tremendous expertise. He was the deputy mayor under 2 mayors in Fort Wayne, as well as worked for the Northeast Regional Partnership and the Fund for Indiana. He's been extremely helpful. But in addition to the quantitative data that we've collected that Tennille just went through, we also commissioned Amanda Lopez from Transform Consulting to look at some qualitative data, to really drill down and try to understand. And so what Amanda did was to interview millennials who had grown up here but moved away for a job, not to return. She looked at millennial residents that were born here between 1980 and 2000 who either stayed for family or returned and came back. She looked at transplants, those individuals who had no association with Wabash County whatsoever but moved here for a job. And she looked at commuters. We all know people who live in our county who work here but have elected for some reason not to live here. So she surveyed those through several different techniques. There was an online survey, she did interviews, and then she also did some focus groups. And here are some of the things that she found. 50% of the millennials in their interviews and focus groups that grew up in Wabash County but moved away responded that they do not see themselves as ever coming back. 50% of the millennials who grew up here in Wabash County but moved after college responded that they were either unsure or did not expect to stay in Wabash County in the next 5 years. They're planning on leaving. They identified the summary of key threats to staying here in the county. They felt there was a lack of employment opportunities for those with post-secondary credentials. There was a lack of high-speed internet. We have heard this over and over again, the trouble with internet, particularly in Rowan and LaGros and Thrownton. Transplants, they see the key threats as not being able to find housing, limited retail, and almost no public transportation. Those that live here but work here but live elsewhere, again, they recognized housing and job opportunities as the threat. And lastly, almost all of them indicated that social engagements are really difficult, not only for those that are new to the community, but those are also coming back. We sort of have our siloed friends and churches, and it's difficult to break in. The summary of suggestions from these quantitative data was diversify employment industries. Certainly, we all want to do that. Address housing, invest more resources in K-12 schools to connect K-12 schools to local career pathways. Market Wabash County. If you think about it, we have 2 reservoirs and 2 rivers, bike trails. We have a lot of natural resources. I'm told that counties that do well have 2 things in common. One is a water feature for recreation and fun, and another is a highly engaged citizenship in civic engagement, in stakeholder engagement in the future of their own county. They also wanted to develop more retail and more social offerings. There were suggestions made to partner more with Manchester University in their sporting events, in their cultural events that they have to enrich the county life, and increase the number of quality jobs and wages, especially those with post-secondary degrees. Mark Stafford had been with the Community Research Institute as its executive director at Purdue University for years and years, and is responsible for most of the data at the Northeast Regional Partnership, which we all use. Mark Becker, who had been, again, is with Parkview, and John Stafford, also connected with some, what do I want to say, our older citizens who could give some historical perspective to the data that we're looking at. Because without that context of what really went on, it's just data. So they interviewed about 15 people, again, older individuals in the county, and these are the 4 key takeaways that those sage individuals said. GDX closure in 2007 was a huge wake-up call and a big hit. We had lost other manufacturing facilities, but their labor forces weren't so significant that they couldn't be absorbed by others. But this was a tremendous hit, and it meant that people moved away. They also feel that the relational divide between Wabash and North Manchester is evaporating. There are many, many organizations like Grow Wabash County, like the Community Foundation, like the Learn More Center, like Heartland Career Center, like the collaborations between the public schools that are helping for us to share our resources and collaborate. And they felt these individuals that had been in Wabash County for their whole life, thought that that divide had been evaporating. They also found that there was high esteem for our public sector. They were seen as our public servants. They were seen as assets, not liabilities, which is a great platform from which to work together also. They saw that the Highway 24 was both good and bad. It was seen as a way to bring manufacturing and commerce, but it's also so easy for any one of us to jump on 24 and go someplace else to shop, someplace else to eat, someplace else to find our recreation. So it's both good and bad.
So why does this all matter? I think you guys touched on this already in your discussions, but declining population is declining school enrollment, and declining school enrollment is reduced funding because, as you guys all know, so much of funding right now is tied to a per student head. Also, as our population declines, you're going to see smaller customer base, so that means less professional services, less retail, less shopping. And as we've been out canvassing the community to see what they want, that's exactly what they want. So it's kind of cyclical there. In my wheelhouse, shrinking population is a shrinking workforce. The number one thing prospective businesses and manufacturers and industry coming to the community, what they're looking for is, do you have the people to fill the jobs? Do you have talented people? So, and then the last thing, the loss of leadership. As our communities continue to shrink, the pool of leaders to choose from shrinks as well. So you'll start to see the same people on the committees and on the boards. So that's a real problem. If we want to continue to be innovative, we need fresh ideas and new leaders coming up. We know that to arrest or to even reverse population decline, which we've been in since before I was born, is a very ambitious goal. But organizations like the Community Foundation and Grow Wabash County and the school boards and community are going to work together to figure out a way to make it prosperous. One thing as we look forward to making our plans and to go after that $5 million grant, a couple macro trends that we want to keep in mind as we formulate plans is that population loss is not the fault of past or current leadership. It's happening everywhere. Rural communities across the country and across the globe are shrinking, so we're not alone. Also, we have an aging demographic. Our median age is increasing. That median age is typically past the family formation age, and as we've all talked about, we would like some family formation and some more kids in our schools. So working on that median age. Declining manufacturing, which we discussed earlier, is not unique to us as well. Even Allen County is losing manufacturing. And then also the last thing to keep in mind as we come up with plans to move forward is our location. We're not next to an interstate, and we are more than one county removed from a metropolitan. Any county or community that's a county removed is typically in decline right now. So that is one thing. We unfortunately can't move a little closer to Fort Wayne or Indianapolis, so we have to make that come closer to us. I'll pass it over to Patty to talk about some of the recommendations.
Thanks. So what do we do? Our researchers said, certainly remember there's no magic bullet, but try to be very strategic, be intentional, be bold. This is not the time to tinker. What can we come up with that would be bold, that would make a difference in population growth in Wabash County? Focus on what we can control. They were very pleased with an expression that Dave McFadden said, where we are going is not where we have been. They prepared for us a 21-point recommendations. Implement a civic engagement model. I'm not sure if some of you are aware of Columbus, Indiana in the year 2000. Their schools and employers got together and said, how do we do our work together better? They created a model called the Civic Lab, and it's been used all over the country now. It is what is being used by Findlay, Ohio, which has had some really rapid growth, particularly in manufacturing. So Developing a civic engagement model comes back to what I had said about a robust civic engaged population helps propel ideas, helps get things done. So how can we engage more people in the work that we want to do? Another civic engagement model that the Community Foundation just implemented, you might have read about it in the newspaper, is called On the Table. In 2014, the Community Foundation in Chicago, if you can imagine trying to understand all the needs of the diverse communities across the city of Chicago, would be nearly impossible. But what they did was they elected to train volunteers and stationed those volunteers throughout neighborhoods in the city of Chicago to predictably, consistently, and routinely be in the same location each week. And the purpose of that was to station themselves to build trust and to encourage people to come out and start talking about, I live in a food desert, my kids don't have anything to do, I'm suffering police brutality, whatever that was. And the Community Foundation of Chicago then used it to implement action plans and used it to determine how they wanted to do their funding in neighborhoods. The Community Foundation actually just is implemented On the Table. We've had over 65 conversations around. We've had volunteers collecting individuals that they wanted to talk to, that they wanted to get information from. Just briefly, all of those comments are never attributed to an individual. The comments are compiled, sealed in an envelope along with the survey, and passed along to Dr. Marcy Coulter-Kern at Manchester University, who is going to codify them with her senior research class and prepare a report back to the community about what the community says, what is it that they feel that we need to be paying attention to. Ball State University, also many of you may be familiar, has an Indiana Community Institute. They've got some great classes. We did some work up here with our boards. And finally, there's a tremendous book on the market called Strategic Doing. I think maybe some of you are familiar with it. That's also an engagement model, largely born out of the IT industry, where you continue to iterate, and iterate rather than strategic plan once, put it on the shelf and let it go. Develop one plan. If you didn't know, the county does not have a comprehensive plan as a county. North Manchester is actually the most fortunate. Their comprehensive plan is only 5 years old. The city of Wabash, I believe, is over 20 years old. However, they've had a stellar grant which allowed them to do quite a bit of planning. So our researchers have recommended that we spend some money and find community developers to help us develop a comprehensive plan, and also conduct a fiscal policy analysis so that you can stay ahead. You can keep your infrastructure, you can anticipate what's coming up and pay as you go. Our researchers tell us this is both fundamental, this is baseline, this is something that every county ought to have, but it's also not only fundamental, it's transformational, because once you have a plan in place and you can collect the civic leaders around that plan, you can make a difference. Collaboration and leadership, I've already mentioned quite a bit about that. You are encouraged to work with the Northeast Regional Partnership and the resources that they have related to talent development. And actually they have a campaign, the Road to 1 Million, which you might be familiar with. Develop initiatives to welcome newcomers, and initiate an inter-community visitation program. That's how we got to Findlay. We loaded up a busload of 25 people and learned from Findlay leaders how they're engaging in a stakeholder engagement model, how they're working with their K-12 schools to develop pathways to careers. They're lucky. They have Marathon Oil, Cooper Tire, and Romark, which I wasn't familiar with Romark, but then they have created some fabulous partnerships with those industries that are there. Strengthen the role of the Community Foundation. I think what that means is raise more money. Leverage Wabash County's unique assets. That's the rivers and the reservoirs. We are really blessed with those natural resources, and are we really using them or capitalizing on them? Advance housing strategies. We hear often from Manchester University folk that are locating here that they can't find good places to live. That's a shame, and we want to work on that. Focus on the near-term quality of place assets.
And I'll just quickly go through these. Some of the economic development recommendations that they gave us is to aggressively support existing businesses. They said to continue to go after new business, but that job growth will most likely occur from our existing businesses. So to definitely be aggressive in supporting those. They also said to create a risk-taking culture and to really encourage that entrepreneurship ecosystem. And the last one, that they said to leverage our core strengths and to really focus on those. So some of the ones that they had suggested or mentioned was our agriculture sector, to do more in that arena. And then also, we're so close to the orthopedic capital of the world, so what can we do to continue to attract more medical device companies here, like Precision Medical Technologies? So they said to keep doing that. In regards to education, they said we need to maintain a competitive school system. And what they defined that, they said, be the school of choice. Make those, the faculty of Manchester University want to live here because they want to put their kids in school here. So they're not driving back to Fort Wayne at the end of their workday. They said to make sure we're infusing the schools with career pathways and exposing the kids to careers that currently exist in our area and those jobs that'll be here in the future. They talked a little bit about incentives. They didn't really give us the golden idea there, but they said to try and come up with some incentive programs to get young, educated adults to come back. I think you guys mentioned some incentives earlier, but how do we incentivize the Mark Francis of the world who just finished their law degree to come back, or who aren't from here to come here? So maybe that be forgive some student loans or help with closing cost of housing. Was a couple ideas they gave us. They also said to develop programs that encourage community, business, and school collaboration, and to really focus on educational attainment. And very last recommendation, they said to do a county-wide branding initiative to increase tourism, to encourage new residents to move here, and to also build up our local pride to retain our existing people. Next steps.
Yeah, contact us. It's just easy, right? We got it all figured out. Thanks for listening to this. I hope you all remember there's no magic bullet. We hope to develop these stakeholder engagement, we call them wheels of coalition, one around early childhood, one around workforce development, one around health or housing. So when you're asked to serve or join in the conversation about what would be effective, I hope you'll say yes and know that we're working on it. We certainly hope to get that $5 million grant. If you ask me right now, what are you going to ask for? I can't tell you. We're going to be continuing to engage the community. We're eager to get Marcy Culture Kern's report back to you, listen to what the community is thinking they want to do. We hope to engage a comprehensive planner to look across the county and do a fiscal policy analysis to see what those infrastructure needs are. So those are all the next steps, but please be in contact with us, and thanks so much for letting us come in and talk about all those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for what you do for our community. Appreciate it, really.
It's good work.
Thank you. All right, we have two other items for discussion on our agenda. There are two policies that are in the first reading. So the first one is Policy 5200, Animals in the Classroom. There's no motion or second, it's just a discussion.
Right. And as you read, hopefully in the policy, this is actually a policy that, came from the legislators simply to address issues with allergies and students in the classroom. So it's really about protecting our kids and making sure that we are cognizant of those students and when we bring in animals in the building.
So I had when I was reading that, I had the thought, is that just addressing the classroom and the buses, or should that include basically all of our property?
Sporting events,
Yeah, I mean,
This is just the law as written, and I'm bringing it to you in that way. If you want to add to that, you certainly can. I know Raju and I have been going back and forth on emails, and he was concerned about some things there. My concern is if we make it for all outside events, we have some facilities that we are renting that are not ours. How do we monitor keeping them away? If someone's walking their dog and they stop at a soccer game, how can we ask them to leave? You know, I don't have all the answers. I'm just throwing those things out there as maybe possible concerns on how we would address that. My question to him, I guess today was, can we just hang a sign out on, actually we have them for our idling as well. No pets allowed within the football field or wherever it may be. I don't know what that answer is. If you feel like you need to put it in policy where it's our entire facilities that are owned by us, or it certainly does not address that in that policy because that was not the intent of the policy.
I also had a concern about, aside from the allergies, if we've got just pets coming to a football game or a track meet or something, you know, we don't know that those pets have had shots. We don't know that somebody's not going to let them off their leash or not pay attention to them, and a little concern about the liability in those situations.
Does anybody know of any issues that have ever happened with pets regarding coming to our events? Dr. Lippy, are you aware of anything?
Didn't we have something a couple of years ago,
I don't,
Dr. Lippy?
I can't answer that.
I thought we had somebody that had to have the pet because of behavioral or emotional.
If we have someone has a service animal, I think we have to honor that.
We have to honor
Oh,
the
yeah,
service animal.
This
Yeah,
was-
certainly.
I won't say that we run into that very often. I mean, we have people come in with their pets, a dog to a track meet. I think track meets or maybe a cross-country meet. They're coming from all different areas. You know, we stretch clear down there to the softball fields and, you know, the public park. So, I mean, that's not rampant, but every so often I'll see a dog. Can't think, I mean, maybe somebody walks in with a ferret, but not too many, you know, not a lot.
We did have, we did have a situation, I was probably a couple of years ago, maybe, I want to say, time gets by me, it's probably a little bit longer than that, but we did have somebody that needed a dog in the classroom for emotional support. The problem was a child was allergic, and so then we had that situation, and so.
And that a policy actually addresses that, where they would work that out with the classroom teacher and the administrator and try to find alternative, whether it's changing of classes or whatever it is, because we do have to try to honor that, so we have to try to figure out how to do that.
Is there certification for service animals?
I
For-
believe there is for service
for
animals,
service.
but I don't think there is for the emotional support animals. Not that
I
I'm
think
aware
there
of.
is.
I don't think you have to have it though. Because a person can have a service animal and it's not be certified and you still have to honor it. Now, I will tell you, we don't see that. I mean, not that we could have it next week, but we don't. And I don't think we can force them to have it certified. That's the thing. I don't think courts aren't. I don't think they'll support you if you say, we're not honoring it because it's not certified. So,
I think that's basically what this says, though, doesn't it?
Trying to remember. I have to pull it out.
Last sentence of the second paragraph, it says the dog's laminated identification.
I thought they had to,
card
yeah, I thought
requested.
they had to have it there. Yeah, they have to be requested for verification on there.
I'm okay with this policy as it's written. Oh, is there other discussion about this?
Well, and some of this, I mean, normally isn't the person that owns the dog responsible for some of the liability? Like in the outside, so pet gets away, he bites somebody, is that school's responsibility or is that the owner's responsibility, Mark?
School has the responsibility to make sure the students are safe, so it's probably a bit of shared responsibility there.
Whoever has the deeper pockets, right?
Probably.
We're gonna sue everybody.
That's right.
Do you have any kind of suggestion, since we do rent facilities, what we would even begin to do for those kind of events that are not on our property?
I'd say ask if the event location has any of their own policies to follow those. If not, we can choose to enforce our policies for our event permit.
Okay. It's just, my concern is I think about the soccer field, there's a sidewalk there that's public property. They're walking along, but everybody's sitting along there. So would we be responsible if a dog is walking down that sidewalk and there's an event going on and they bite somebody sitting there as a spectator? You see what I'm saying?
I would like to say in that situation, the owner is more responsible, but no matter what happens, both parties, we're gonna
Yeah.
be sued regardless.
I mean, the sidewalk's got nothing to do with that. I mean, the sidewalk's not,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's public property. It's,
Right, but a lot of the spectators that watch those games are sitting right there, even though it's not the soccer field. And
well, the dog would have had to come off the sidewalk then to bite somebody, I guess, but.
not necessarily, they sit right on it.
So can we rewind here a minute? Is the intent of the legislation, I don't, wish I knew this for sure, but I'll ask somebody, but it's a little too late to do that. But is the intent of legislation in the classroom, is that why it's titled like that?
Yes, it
And
was,
then do we cover, is there any other policy that covers external? So we
I
could
could not
approve
find
this
any
and then
that we
look at
had
it, look at it. And maybe maybe inside the classroom, we need to look at this, and then maybe we need to take a closer look at external, whether it's on school property or not,
That's-
rental facility or
that would be
something.
my point, and the policy is animals in the classroom, so let's address this, and then if we don't want animals on the property, it's probably a separate policy or.
That's gonna be rough. I mean, you got a lot of, it just was Veterans Day. You got a lot of GIs with service dogs right now. I train a lot of them and they need them, so, I mean.
Well, but, I mean, service animals are specifically allowed.
Yeah, so. All right,
but I'm not sure that, even if they're a service animal, they could have the dander and it's not gonna address the allergy thing. You're also saying you're concerned because they might attack someone or something?
I'm honestly not worried about service dogs because they are trained. I mean,
Be
there's,
more like-
there's risk in anything, so, I mean, I wouldn't be as concerned with a service dog. I'm concerned with just Joe Blow coming in with his dog that has no training and might be gotten beaten that morning.
abusive pit bull or something.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know anything about those animals.
Right, but I guess your email to me back and forth was about allergies, so that's why I'm going to allergies. I thought maybe that's what.
Allergies is certainly a concern as well, but I mean,
Because
to me,
service animals could
a
have-
service animal, if somebody needs an animal if they can't see and they need an animal like that, to me is, like, you can't do anything about that. Like,
Right, yeah.
I mean, that's gonna be allowed. It has to be allowed. It should be allowed. But I'm just saying, if it's not an important thing like that, if it's just somebody wants to bring in a new puppy because it's a new puppy, I'm not sure that that's the same level of importance.
Mark, does it have to go in policy, or could it just be something that has signs on the property that says no pets allowed on the property?
Yeah, we could make it essentially like administrative guidelines, so if you say that's what we want to do, we can do that. It doesn't have to be a policy.
Okay. I'm just curious. I didn't know whether we could just.
Do we have anything against peanuts on school property? I'm just teasing.
Peanuts aren't animals.
Yeah, I know. Why are we picking on animals here when peanuts do more damage than the animals?
All right, so I guess, is there more discussion? Is there something we want changed? And another first reading, I guess, just what?
Is this a first reading or is this a discussion? First reading?
First reading.
And a discussion, yes.
Okay.
It's the same, yeah. I mean, we can
Valid.
I
certainly
would suggest
modify.
we look at a separate policy for the property rather than outside the classrooms. Different considerations, different way to treat it. So this can be in the classroom, we can have separate one for out of the classroom.
Not imagine that got pretty fickle with them, that's probably why they put in the classroom.
Probably.
There were a lot of pets in a lot of classrooms, and
Yeah.
there were issues, I can definitely say that.
Is there more discussion, or are we good?
So will we see a policy then on that, or?
If that's what the board would like, yes, we can certainly do that. Are you all in agreement that you want something for our grounds, our facilities, our outside facilities, I should say?
I think so. That's, I mean, yeah, you can do a policy 5200A, or, you know, whatever, for external.
Okay.
Or at least understand the exposure, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, if there's nothing else, then let's move on to policy 7010.
This is a policy that came into effect several years back that is about idling buses. I think we do a pretty good job making sure our buses are turned off when they're at the bus hub and at the schools, and it's all about that fumes that could actually cause harm, health conditions for our students, so. Any questions?
Can we include all the cars idling in front of the building every morning?
It actually says that in here. Drivers of all public and private vehicles. It's very difficult to monitor that, though.
so where'd we end up on enforcement?
What's,
Laptop's gone, I wanted to read, where'd we end up on this policy? I mean, so we've got the signs out there, and we've got a policy, and we've got signs, how do we enforce this?
well, we can easily enforce it with our buses, but when we're talking to private vehicles, it's very difficult. I've walked up to them before, not necessarily here, but, and asked them to turn them off, and then you get arguments, why do I have to do that? They don't understand it's the law, you explain it to them. But it's very, very difficult to monitor.
Yeah, I just, okay.
The reason I brought it up is this, today was 2-hour delay, so I got to drive grandkids, and there was 27 cars in line, every one of them idling this morning, and they were even across the crosswalks. I couldn't pull up and let my grandkids out to get on the sidewalk, they would have had to walk between cars. So, you know, I don't know about enforcement, but I don't know what we do. Maybe we put cones out so that they can't park across the crosswalks. You know, I mean,
I
we got
don't know
two.
what building you're talking about.
I'm talking about
so-
right out here at the bus hub in front of the high school. You come in that driveway this morning, and there was cars lined up from where you come in and make the left turn all the way down to the bus hub, and they were parked right across the crosswalks. I could not pull up and drop my grandkids off and let them get out of the vehicle without having them walking between idling vehicles. So I'm saying, you know, a set of cones, put cones there, so they gotta swing out around them. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but that's not a very safe situation.
Well, that just sounds like something that's a procedural thing that we need to take a look at if that's an issue. To me, that's not necessarily an idling issue.
Maybe it's as simple as renting a tent for this time of year and putting it out there on the front lawn so the parents can drop the kids off, they can get out of the weather, and they can drop and go instead of sitting there. I mean, depending on what time you get here, some of those people sit there 10 or 15 minutes. Their vehicle's idling, so I mean, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe Dana will come
Well,
back
it's
with
Indiana,
some-
19 degrees, you know,
Yeah.
so.
I get it.
I just think it's a very, very difficult law for us as school people to try to monitor. I mean, because I would ask the same people 3 days in a row, and they continue to do it. So,
And there's 2 lanes there, maybe we just need to put some pins or cones in and leave that lane, that first lane that's supposed to be the fire lane, open. If they wanna pull up and park, it's a one-way driveway in the morning anyways, maybe they just pull up there and they can park and sit there, and the kids can get out without having to walk between vehicles. I don't know, I'm hoping Dana comes back with something on his audit.
So I guess the root cause, the question I'd ask is, why are they sitting there?
Can we move back to this policy and a discussion on this policy? Right, because I think
That
there's
is
two
the
separate
discussion on
issues.
the policy.
Well, I think
No,
the
the cars are
discussion.
sitting
You
there.
know, I brought up
what I'm saying, they're
enforcement of
sitting
the
there.
policy, and I'm
Okay.
asking the question, why are they sitting there?
They're waiting for the buses to show up.
Dr.
We had a
Libby, do
bus,
you know?
Okay.
we had, what, 2 buses late today. It caused a backup. The kids, it was cold.
Yeah,
It'll be cold too. Hopefully we won't have a backup. It was an outlier situation this morning.
it's kind of special cause deal. Yeah, it's Indiana, it's cold,
Oh, yeah.
but it's, you know, on the enforcement thing, that's what we talked about in the policy meeting, right? Very difficult to enforce, so we got a policy. If we put the signs up there, you know, maybe we gotta monitor it and see what's going on, but it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be a rough one, you know, so.
It would really, we would need more personnel to be able to try to even tackle that.
Or your SRO goes out and starts ticketing people, and I could see how well that would go over, right? So, I mean, you know, yeah, grow enrollment, yeah.
Maybe we could get Tommy a vest and a flashlight.
There is one comment I would like to make about this, though, is, not sure what the age of all of our buses are, but you have buses that have a clean idle certification. If you've got a vehicle running DEF, you should be able to idle because the exhaust air coming out is cleaner than the air going in.
Tell the
someone argues if-
legislators that.
Excuse me?
Tell the legislators
Well,
that.
yeah, so I ought to tell them. I mean, all commercial vehicles, if they have it, they've got that sticker on it, they're
I
allowed to.
know.
But anyway,
Is that kind of,
I don't know if I'll go down that hill. I just-
no, it's good, Pete, maybe it needs to be in there or
That's a
something.
good point.
Yeah. So,
Mike, you can address that with our legislators.
there you go,
There you go.
we will. Okay.
So are you fine with this?
I'm good with it.
Anything, any modifications to it whatsoever, or? Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, now we're at the portion of the meeting where we hear from the public. Are there any patron comments?
What about Heartland?
I think that's under the school board comment. 8.1, Heartland update. Superintendent comments?
I have a few. I sent you all, board members, I sent you a calendar invite for November 18th. I was just able to secure the board training this afternoon. That'll be at 5:30 in my office, and dinner will be served as well, so come hungry.
Is that gonna be
I-
Mr. Addison?
What's that? Dr. Adamson,
Dr.
yes. Will be, leading that training. Also want to just make a general statement. I just recently sent out a letter describing where we have been, where we are going with our strategic plan. That's been posted on Facebook. It's also on our website under the About Me tab, or About Us tab. In MCS Stay Informed, and we will be putting all of our updated information on underneath that. So the mission, the vision, the commitment statements, all of that is in there. And as we progress through, we will give updates. There will also be a monthly newsletter that will be going out with a lot of things highlighted throughout the district, and we'll make sure we're sending that out to staff as well as anybody in the community that wants to sign up for an email. And that is available on that, under that tab as well. So finally getting rolling here. And that's all I have.
Thank you. School board comment. We'll begin with Heartland update from Mr. Turflinger.
Okay, last month, Mark and Lori Du Bois was here. Next Wednesday, the Heartland Board will vote, and I'm assuming it will pass, to send the Precision Ag Specialist 1 and 2 classes to the State Board of Education for approval. Like Mark said, we're not looking for 30 kids for this class, maybe 30 kids in total. We're looking, 2 or 3 cream of the crop from each FFA program. This is going to be an exciting opportunity with some dual college credits and stuff, but that's getting ready to get sent out. Teresa and Mark and I had a meeting last week. We're doing the strategic plan, getting Heartland involved in that as we move forward. Mark's also let the staff know that we don't have to have 3 hours at Heartland, that the kids can do a 2-hour class down there, which gives them a 3-hour window, getting down there and getting back, and 2 hours in class, which may help our administrative staff in scheduling. He also wanted to remind the board that we have a 20% ownership in that facility down there. Our name is on the title to the property, and once again, he's offering a dinner and a tour to the board whenever we can get down there. He would, the classes down there would cook us dinner, and we could down have a meeting, do a tour. Doesn't necessarily have to be a meeting, but a tour. He's offered it every year. We have our first female student. I can't remember her first name, I apologize. Her last name is Metzger, and she's from Manchester. She's going to take the CDL class down there, which is a pilot program that Steve was part of getting. And then Teresa asked me to go to Findlay, Ohio with the Community Foundation, and was pretty exciting. They had some severe flooding over there, and they have, they're twice the size of Wabash County. They're 534 square miles. We're around 250. They got 9 school districts over there. But one of the things that jumped out at me is when they had their flood, their career center got flooded. And so they used FEMA money, tore it down, built a new one. And they have a business and school committee that meets and looks at curriculum, making sure that the kids are graduating with what's needed for the workforce. But one of the things that they did, they have Cooper Tire, they got GE, they got Marathon Petroleum, I can't remember the name of the other company over there. There was about 7 of them. This was the first year that they were able to get the kids inside of Cooper Tire. They took 1,000 8th graders, I think it was 3 years ago. This year was the first year they got in to Cooper Tire, but 3 years ago they started doing this. And they took 1,000 8th graders through these different plants and sparked that interest. That was their key focus for their pathways. And this year they are up 12% at their career center. They have 100 more kids interested in going to their pathways. So again, in closing, Mark would love to have us come down there. We got all the new board members. Steve's been there. I don't know if he's even aware of all the new changes. Oh, the EDM machine is up and running, and if you check out the paper, Wabash County, there's some pictures, and I would like to thank the 80/20 Foundation and our Community Foundation. They were a big help in getting that machine up and running and getting it in place. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just on the legislation, did a little breakfast with Andy Zakanya, Rupel, some other, past and present legislators. And Andy would, my thing to them was, it's easy for the legislation to be kind of monstertized, if I can use that word, when we don't know them. And so Andy would, and I've shared this with Mrs. Grimeau, Dr. Grimeau, Andy would like to address the board, and I think a weakness is those guys, they don't come in and talk to the school boards, and so he would he can't make December, but I'd ask that we would put something on the agenda for January for him to come in and just address the board with a few things, so.
So you're not wanting a work session where there's
No,
back and forth?
no, he
You
just wants to
want
come
some
to the board
discussion?
meeting. He can't make December, but I'd like him to come in January and just address the board from a legislative viewpoint. And Mark, I'd, ask if you'd want to kind of be part of that group, because I think one of the things is, collectively in the school corporation, to find out what are these legislative changes that we want, and so I'm not, the more things I go to through the ISBA, the Department of Ed and things like that, I mean, I hear common themes out of people, but I don't know who's listening and who's hearing it, so just trying to get a voice from this community on the legislation of the changes we need, and things like that, just building personal relationships with these guys to try to get there. I'm also part of Kanye's group, Northeast Advocacy Group, so they're, I pay good money for that, so they're supposed to be a voice of some of the changes we want to the legislators. So I think we've got some good avenues to ask for certain things, and then the other things we're gonna have to figure out how to get them done, some of the things we talked about on our own, so just letting you know what's going on there.
Dr. Glow, Tuesday, the 19th. I think the last count, there's like 40 school districts that are closing for that deal down there in Indianapolis. Are we gonna offer our staff here an opportunity during the workday to call, email, or text, or you got any kind of, I mean to put you on the spot, maybe the late start on Wednesday, give them some time, or has any thought been put into that, or?
Actually, I've been in contact with Jeff Huber. I don't know if you want to go up and kind of talk as well, but I'll kind of fill him in, just to kind of see where we're at. And he can tell you from the teacher side, and I can tell you what I suggested to him as well.
It's over 80 school districts now are
Okay.
closing. And it's over 6,000 registered people going to the rally. So locally here at Manchester, we have a group of teachers that are going down to Indianapolis that day. They're taking a personal day. And MTA is organizing some opportunities for teachers, administrators, school board members to contact our legislators, because quite frankly, they aren't listening. It would be great to see Andy here, Mr. Zay here, because they aren't listening. Yet again, we keep hearing about initiatives that are not anything that any teacher or administrator K through 12 would be pushing, but they're pushing it, and they refuse to, that they're not listening to us about other issues such as school funding. We're 51st for teacher pay increases for the last 10 years. That's behind 50 other states, the District of Columbia. So on the 19th, we do have some teachers going to Indianapolis. We're also organizing some teachers. You're going to see a lot of red that day, and we appreciate Dr. Gross' openness and receptiveness to doing some things to try and get those issues out there. School funding is the number one issue, but also listening to local school boards, communities about what is best for education in Indiana, and listening to the people who know what they're talking about when some of these things. We have a superintendent of education right now who is a Republican, who has been, if you look at her stuff, has been yelling for the last year now about some things that they're not listening about either. So we have some activities planned. So.
Thank you.
Oh, I would just add to that too, that we had a discussion of one of the most effective ways to get their attention, our legislators, because I was just in a meeting with Department of Ed and some other people who suggested, yes, going down there is a good idea, but they're going to get more if they get phone calls. The legislators get phone calls. So we kind of talked about getting something scripted. They can go down during prep periods. They're going to be encouraged to do that, to make those phone calls. And just all day long, they're going to hear from us, not just at the State House, but also here in Manchester. So,
What about putting phone numbers and email addresses on our website in case parents?
we can certainly do that with what we're going to have scripted and allow the community to be able to call as well.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Are there other comments?
I have one. I haven't been on the website lately, but just looking at it right now, it looks like somebody's been doing some good work and updating some pictures. So is that Randy?
That would be Mr. Self.
Thank you.
He's doing an excellent job.
Slowly getting things caught up.
Well, it's
Yeah.
noticeable. I don't know if
Thank
it's
you.
functional, but it looks good.
I think the amazing thing is he's juggling 4 different jobs and trying to do that, so kudos to him. He's doing a great job with it.
I'd just like to make one comment is, I'd like to wish all of our family, or all our staff, a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy some time off, much needed time off, and enjoy that time with your family, enjoy it. I can't believe it's already that time.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
All right, then, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming tonight. Board, remember you have things to sign before you leave. Thank you.